Welcome to Fear and Greed, business news you can use today. Macquarie lobs an $11.6 billion bid for logistics group Qube as BHP has its second tilt at Anglo American rejected. Federal Parliament is back for the final sitting week of the year and it's all about energy policy. And a gold-trimmed pocket watch that went down with the Titanic sells for a record price. Plus, US Ambassador Kevin Rudd cops a spray for the government's new content rules for streaming services, and the DroneShield sell-off gets sinister. It is Tuesday, the 25th of November 2025. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Nothing like a sinister story on Fear and Greed, Michael. I love it.
From the Titanic to a sinister story. Got a bit of everything today, Sean. The main story this morning, though, Macquarie Asset Management has made an $11.6 billion bid for logistics group Qube, sending its share price up 19% yesterday. Meanwhile, briefly yesterday, it looked like BHP was returning with a new bid for Anglo American, though that did fizzle rather quickly.
Oh, it was a very exciting few hours yesterday morning. The deal that is up and running is between Macquarie and Qube. Now, Qube is spelt Qube. The $5.20 a share indicative offer is about a 28% premium to Qube's share price on Friday, its closing price on Friday. It does follow an earlier unsolicited bid from Macquarie. They now have, this is Macquarie Asset Management, now has exclusivity around a due diligence. They'll have that access until February 1. Qube is the country's largest logistics group, operating across Australia, New Zealand and Asia. It also has a 50% share of Patrick's container terminals. Basically, it shifts stuff around the place from grain and oilseeds to cars, forestry. It has about 150 rail services per week across Australia, engineering services, crane hire, heavy haulage services. It's got an energy division, all that stuff you don't think a lot about, but you need it. Logistics, all important. For its part, Macquarie is becoming a major player in logistics in this country as well as offshore. In fact, it's nice to see an investment in logistics, particularly from Macquarie, rather than data centres, AI, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it feels very old school, very practical, doesn't it? And I love the fact that you described it so simply as it shifts stuff around, which
that's at its nub. That's what it does.
That is
at
it.
Its
now,
hub. At its hub, that's what it does. Oh, nice.
At its logistics hub. Oh, well done. That was glorious. If only you'd thought of it before you said nub. Now, on to BHP, Sean. And this was exciting yesterday morning, and I was kind of sad that it did fizzle out. It was a couple of hours. It sounded like BHP was making another bid for Anglo American, the mining company that actually rebuffed the big Australian $75 billion offer last year. Sadly, it was not to be.
It was almost. So Bloomberg reported that the bid might be back on. Now, ahead of the market opening yesterday, BHP put out a statement saying, I quote, following preliminary discussions with the board of Anglo American, BHP confirms that it is no longer considering a combination of the two companies. Read between the lines, that means they kind of were considering it, but Anglo American weren't interested. Now, under British takeover laws, BHP's statement legally prevents it from mounting an offer for Anglo over the next 6 months. Anglo shareholders, of course, are due to vote on a deal with a Canadian miner called Teck Resources on December 9. Under that deal, those two, Anglo and Teck, will come together, very much focused on copper mining in that particular deal. That's all the formal stuff. What does this actually say about BHP? What's a second rejected bid say about BHP? It shows it wants copper assets.
Yeah.
Still, I think it is the world's biggest copper miner, BHP. But it wants more. It shows how much Anglo doesn't want to work with BHP.
Hard not to take that personally, wouldn't it?
Exactly. It also shows that BHP is acquisitive should the right deal come up. Thus far, it looks from afar that it's being very disciplined about how much it will spend, but it definitely is acquisitive.
Yeah. And the other thing broadly I think that we can take from both this and the Qube deal is that it suggests M&A activity is certainly picking up.
It's getting busier. There have been plenty of deals in resources, particularly in the gold stocks. There's also been a few failed ones, most notably ADNOC's bid for Santos. But so far outside resources, it's been relatively quiet. Maybe that's changing. Like apart from Qube yesterday, a consortium led by Genesis Capital and Soul Patts made a bid for Monash IVF. That sent its share price up 40%. Maybe we're just about to see a bit of action, Michael.
Oh, very exciting. And hopefully it doesn't all just fizzle out like yesterday morning's did. Hopefully it all just goes all the way. Sean, the ASX yesterday, I'd say, is a cracker of a day. Is that a technical term?
No, it's definitely a technical term. 1.3%. Yeah, I think that's a cracker of a day.
That's a cracker. Anything north of 1.2% is officially a cracker.
Is that okay? Good.
Yep.
8,525 points was the close. Widespread rally. So the industrials, tech, property, healthcare and utilities sub-indices were all up 2% or more. Only the energy index went backwards, followed a surge on Wall Street over the weekend on hopes that the US Fed will cut interest rates again, notwithstanding the surge yesterday. The ASX 200 is still off about 6% from its peak of early last month. Among the large caps yesterday, Westpac, CSL, Goodman, Transurban and Pro Medicus did best. Now, that's an eclectic group, isn't it? Westpac, CSL, Goodman, Transurban and Pro Medicus, all over 2%. Woodside Energy, Sigma Healthcare and Macquarie were among the worst, another eclectic group.
Yep.
Best of the top 200 was plumbing supplies group Reece, closed up 13%. That's been hammered, well, ever since its last results, actually. Good to see it bouncing somewhat.
Yeah, indeed. Lithium prices, though, on the other hand, have slumped over the past few days on reports that the Chinese battery giant CATL, or Contemporary Amperex Technology Limited, is about to reopen a major mine, Sean.
After reports of the mine reopening, lithium prices, which had been rising in recent weeks and months, tumbled 9%. That sent the local lithium miners lower. Liontown, Pilbara Minerals, Mineral Resources were among the worst performers on the ASX 200 yesterday. Very fickle sector at the moment.
Yes.
So last week, Liontown Resources sold 10,000 tonnes of spodumene concentrate for a pretty good price. It was $12.54 US a tonne. First ever digital auction. Double the price. Spodumene traded in June. It helped Liontown's share price jump. In fact, it was up more than 50% in 3 weeks. Yesterday, it was dumped. Who knows?
Yeah. And this mine, the one in China, the CATL mine, that is a huge, huge mine. And we've talked about it in the past, that this is the one where they had traders flying over it with drones just to see if there were any signs of activity, and it helped cause great volatility in the lithium prices because they were interpreting any sign of movement or any sign of activity as indications that it might be about to open. And can we just agree that from now on we'll just call it CATL so that we don't have to keep saying Contemporary Amperex Technology Limited?
Sure. No one knows what either of them are, so it's fine.
That's fine. Well, we agree from here. Sean, coming up after the show, we've still got plenty to go before we get there, but Fear and Greed Q&A, you're talking to Morningstar's Lachlan Holloway today.
It's all about how to invest in the current market, and I think the key message is diversification. But he also gives us a couple of stocks which, as he put it, were ASX 100 stocks who are no longer ASX 100 stocks because they've been sold off big time. And he just kind of tells us why we should think about investing in them.
Yeah, it's a great chat. It's always a great chat talking to Lachlan. It's coming up after the show. Stick around, though. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Federal Parliament is back in session for the final week of the year. Its final week. It's not the final week of the year.
Well, it is if you're a political junkie.
Yeah, if you're a poly,
who cares about Christmas? Yeah.
Nobody cares. And the coalition attacked the government on energy prices, calling Chris Bowen a part-time energy minister. I quite like that line.
Oh, I do too. It's because Bowen will also spend the next year running negotiations for COP31 that's going to be held in Turkey. He will be the chief negotiator. The government's argument in question time yesterday was that Bowen having the main seat at the table in the shift to net zero globally was a great opportunity for Australia. The opposition's line of attack was he'll be missing in action. The opposition also took the government to task over when electricity prices will fall by $275 as promised ahead of the last election. Now, Treasurer Jim Chalmers said the ageing grid was preventing cheaper energy prices. I think what we can gain from all this energy, without a doubt, will be the main issue this week, particularly because the government is attempting to pass its environmental reform package. Also yesterday, Michael, a guest in Parliament was Chinese number 3 leader. Now, I hope I get the pronunciation right, Zhao Liji. And what I thought was fascinating there, Michael, in fact, you talked about it in the afternoon report yesterday, was the shutdown in communications while he was there.
Yeah. Yep. Any non-essential internet-connected devices. So this was kind of phones, laptops, tablets, anything, had to be switched off. And if you needed something to stay on, you basically had to have it in kind of flight mode, really, which is just extraordinary that is how concerned they are about the potential for cyber attack or a cyber breach, which is quite remarkable.
Yeah, totally.
While we are talking politics in the Senate, One Nation's Pauline Hanson caused a bit of an uproar after wearing a burqa into the chamber. This feels like a story from about 20 years ago.
Well, she did it about 2017, was it? She did about 8 years ago, I think.
Okay.
She wore the head covering minutes after she was denied leave by the government to table a bill to have burqas and full-face coverings banned in Australia. It's a policy she's been pushing for a while. She was rebuked by Labor Senate Leader Penny Wong, by Coalition Senate Leader Anne Ruston, other members of the crossbench. A stunt, not a good one.
Now, Australia's ambassador to the United States, Kevin Rudd, has copped a blast. He's copped a few now, hasn't he? He's in the
Well,
firing
he's given a
line.
few in his time, Kevin Rudd, so maybe copping one's not bad.
That's true. Remember how he described the Chinese people,
Yes.
the Chinese diplomats, on that tape that was recorded without him knowing? Anyway, He's copped a blast from Donald Trump's trade czar, Jamison Greer, over the Albanese government's proposed new content obligations for streaming services that have angered US-owned platforms just a little bit.
Greer vented over the planned new laws during a closed-door meeting with Rudd in Washington late last week, according to The Australian. The new laws, unveiled earlier this month, will require streaming platforms with at least 1 million local subscribers, so I think Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus, to spend 10% of their local expenditure or 7.5% of their domestic revenue on Australian-made programming. The move's designed to align international streamers with requirements faced by free-to-air networks, which have been long subject to local content obligations. I don't think it's a bad policy at all.
No. The DroneShield story, Sean, has taken a slightly sinister turn. You mentioned this at the top of the show, with CEO Oleg Vornik telling investors he was justified in selling his entire $50 million stake in the defence technology business, in part because the role carried a significant risk to his life.
Vornik, DroneShield chairman Peter James and another director offloaded $70 million worth of shares with little explanation earlier this month, triggered a huge slide in the defence company's share price. Now, Vornik was due to meet shareholders yesterday, but he had spoken to a number privately, according to the Fin Review, and explained his decision to sell. He said apart from the personal risk, the stock represented a shareholder-approved bonus to him. He's told investors that he and others at DroneShield had worked hard to increase revenues from $50 million to $200 million, with shareholders approving the granting of stock. Now, Vornik almost immediately sold the shares once they vested this month. He's previously spoken about being sanctioned by Moscow after DroneShield sold counter-drone technology to Ukraine's military. He's told investors that he has taken substantial personal risks. Now, yesterday, DroneShield said it would ask two of its independent directors to review the share sales and whether they'd been in line with the company's security trading policies.
Turning to international news now, Sean, US and Ukrainian negotiators have agreed to a, quote, updated and refined peace framework and plan to continue intensive work on a peace plan over the coming days.
A joint statement said talks on a US-backed plan in Geneva had been highly productive. That is good news. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said there had been a tremendous amount of progress on honing the original plan, which had been cautiously welcomed by Russia but not by leaders in Kiev and Europe. They thought it was too favourable to the Kremlin. Rubio said there is still some work to be done, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said there were signals that President Trump's team is hearing us. What I wonder about these stories, Michael, the negotiations, now it's between the US and Kiev. Previously it was US and Russia.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to get Russia and Kiev somewhere around the same kind of, even if they're not at the negotiating table, just like a direct phone line or something or other.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that the impact of direct communications, right, can be quite profound.
Totally.
Finally, Sean, A gold-trimmed pocket watch worn by a famous passenger on the Titanic. And this is the part that I find remarkable. This watch stopped ticking at 2:20 a.m. on the day that the vessel sank. It has been sold at auction for $2.3 million.
Its wealthy owner, Isidore Strauss, was co-owner of Macy's department store franchise. He was travelling first class on the Titanic with his wife, Ida. Ida famously refused to get into a lifeboat without her husband. The two perished on April 15, 1912, having last been seen arm in arm on the deck. In fact, the Titanic movie where you saw the couple in bed, the older couple in bed holding on to each other as it went down, apparently was based on the Strausses. Mr. Strauss's remains were found at sea a fortnight after the Titanic went down. Mrs. Strauss's remains were never recovered, according to the New York Times. The sale was a record for a piece of Titanic memorabilia sold by auction house Henry Aldrich and Son. The house also sold a pocket watch late last year for $1.9 million. In fact, Henry Aldrich and Son have sold quite a few valuable items of Titanic memorabilia recently. It sold another pocket watch for $1.46 million, a violin played on the ship for $1.3 million, a letter from a passenger for $120,000. But this is my favourite, simply because the two Strausses, Isidore and Ida, went down together.
Yeah. It's the story behind it, isn't it? Now, up next is Fear and Greed Q&A. Morningstar's Lachlan Holloway is your guest today, Sean. It's coming up in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is where you sign up for the free daily newsletter that comes out every morning by 6 a.m. I'll put a link in the show notes today as well to make it really, really easy to find. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 25th of November, 2025. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.